We live in a world that speaks to us primarily through the senses sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. These senses form the basis of how we understand and interact with the world around us. Yet, while these senses are invaluable in navigating our immediate surroundings, they are limited. They cannot reach beyond the surface, beyond the physical realm that we perceive with our eyes and ears. There exists a reality beyond this, a reality that is not so easily discernible, not immediately grasped through the material world we so easily observe. It is not just that our physical senses fail to detect this hidden world, but that we often, by habit or willful ignorance, fail to acknowledge it exists. We have come to assume that the visible world is the only one of consequence, that all that truly matters is what we can see and touch. But to live in such a way is to neglect an aspect of existence that is just as real, if not more so, than the world of our senses. This is the spiritual reality that surrounds us. It is a realm where forces beyond human comprehension are at work, forces that influence the heart and mind, forces that tug at our thoughts, our desires, our very will. There is a truth that is inconvenient to modern sensibilities, one that has been dismissed with skepticism by many in our current age, that there is a battle being waged between unseen spiritual forces. It is a conflict that does not announce itself with thunder or lightning, but unfolds quietly, subtly, in the hidden recesses of the human soul. In this battle, each person is not a passive bystander, but an active participant, even if unaware. The choices we make, the thoughts we entertain, the values we embrace, these are not neutral. They are influenced, in ways both large and small, by forces that transcend the merely physical. It is easy to dismiss the reality of such forces because they do not fit into the neat boxes of our rational, scientific worldview. And yet, if we are truly honest with ourselves, we must acknowledge that there are moments, brief and fleeting, when we feel something beyond the ordinary. Perhaps it is an overwhelming sense of peace that descends unexpectedly, or the sharp awareness of a deep moral truth at an inconvenient moment. Perhaps it is the feeling of being drawn towards something higher or pulled down by something darker. These moments, if we are perceptive enough, remind us that what we see with our eyes is but a shadow of what is happening on a deeper level. The struggle is not always visible to the naked eye, but it is as real as the earth beneath our feet. When we choose to act with kindness, we may feel the quiet resistance within ourselves, the inclination to selfishness or laziness. When we choose to resist temptation, the very nature of that temptation can seem to grow stronger. These are not mere accidents or quirks of the human psyche. They are the result of forces at play in the unseen realm, forces that are determined to keep us from seeking truth, from choosing goodness, from growing closer to the divine. The more we awaken to this reality, the more we realize that we are involved in something much larger than our individual lives. Our choices are not isolated events, they are part of a larger cosmic struggle between forces that are at odds with one another. Some may resist this notion, but it is the hallmark of wisdom to recognize that there are things at work beyond our ability to see or understand fully. To deny this unseen reality is to live with blinders on, to ignore the greater forces shaping our thoughts and actions. This spiritual realm, while often hidden from sight, is nevertheless profoundly impactful on our daily lives. Our thoughts, desires, and actions ripple outward, influencing not just ourselves but those around us, and perhaps even the world at large. We may not always be aware of it, but we are always connected to something far greater than ourselves, whether we acknowledge it or not. The choice we have is whether we will live as if this unseen world is irrelevant, or whether we will pay heed to the stirring of something deeper within and around us. To be aware of this reality, to allow it to shape how we live and how we see the world, is to live with a fuller understanding of our place in the cosmos, and to understand the stakes of the battle we are part of, whether we can see it or not. The concept of demons is one that many modern minds find unsettling, perhaps even archaic, something more suited to ancient mythologies or the darker corners of fiction. Yet, if we look closely at human history and the enduring presence of evil in the world, we may begin to suspect that the nature of demons is not as foreign as we might like to believe. It is not merely an idea or a cultural relic, rather. Demons are very real, unseen, yet present, shaping our lives in ways both subtle and direct. Demons are not often what we imagine them to be: horned, grotesque creatures lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce. Instead, they are far more insidious in their operations. They are not bound by the limitations of the physical world, and so their presence is not always visible to the eye. They cannot be measured, touched, or observed through a microscope, but their influence is undeniable. They do not make their presence known through overt displays of power, but rather through whispers, suggestions, and subtle manipulations of the human spirit. They work in ways that are much more difficult to recognize because their purpose is not to be detected, but to influence quietly and incrementally, steering human lives away from the light without ever needing to show themselves fully. The nature of demons is not bound by the same logic and reasoning that governs our physical world. They operate in a realm of temptation, deceit, and destruction, working tirelessly to weaken the moral fabric of humanity. Their goal is not simply to harm individuals, but to destabilize societies, to create division, to foster hatred, and to sow confusion. They are the architects of discord, the invisible hands behind many of the struggles and conflicts that tear apart human lives and communities. Though they may not always be directly responsible for the physical suffering in the world, their influence often provides the seeds for such suffering to take root. A key characteristic of demons is their ability to influence the mind. They operate not by force, but by suggestion. They do not simply overpower a person's will, but they nudge, coax, and whisper quietly, encouraging fear, hatred, pride, envy, and every other dark inclination of the human heart. They understand the weaknesses within each person and exploit them with masterful precision. They understand the vulnerabilities of the human spirit, and they use this knowledge to plant seeds of doubt, to erode the moral clarity of individuals, and to weaken their resolve. They do not want to be noticed, for their power lies in subtlety. If they can lead a person down a path of self-deception, their work is done. A person may begin by simply entertaining a fleeting thought, but over time, that thought grows into a conviction, shaping their actions and their very identity. Demons are not content merely to tempt us in isolated instances. Their goal is to create a permanent shift in the direction of a person's life. They work tirelessly, day after day, cultivating vices and shaping hearts away from the light. They know that evil rarely takes root all at once. Rather, it begins with small compromises, unnoticed slips, and seemingly insignificant choices. Over time, these small decisions compound, gradually altering the person's life and spirit. The demon's work is akin to a slow, steady erosion, quietly eating away at the foundation of goodness within the human soul until nothing is left but a hollow shell. Furthermore, demons thrive on division. Their work is not only personal but social. They seek to destroy relationships, to sow distrust, to create isolation. The more they can separate individuals from one another, the more they can foster a sense of isolation, the more effective they are in their efforts. They know that human beings are inherently social creatures, and that when we are divided, we are weakened. This division can manifest in countless ways in families, in communities, in nations. It is through division that demons are able to break down the unity and strength that could otherwise resist their influence. While demons are certainly powerful in their ability to manipulate and deceive, they are not omnipotent. They can influence, they can tempt, but they cannot control. Their power is limited by the free will of individuals. The truth remains that they are not the ultimate authority. They are, in the grand scope of things, merely agents of chaos. While they may seem to have an upper hand in some moments, their dominion is ultimately fragile, built on deception and darkness. The light of truth, the strength of will, and the power of moral clarity are the forces that can drive them back, revealing them for what they are. In recognizing the nature of demons, we are faced with the stark choice to live in ignorance of their presence, or to become aware of their influence and resist it. To acknowledge their existence is not to become consumed by fear or paranoia, but to understand that we are part of a larger spiritual struggle, one that affects every moment of our lives. Though they may remain unseen, demons are ever present, and their work is evident in the darkness that so often encroaches upon the human heart. Yet this awareness is not cause for despair, for there is hope in the very recognition of their existence. We are not helpless, and we are not alone. In resisting their influence, we partake in a greater victory, one that lies in choosing the light over the darkness, in choosing truth over deceit. We often go about our daily lives as though the world we inhabit is a place of relative peace, a place where things unfold according to predictable patterns, and where our personal struggles are confined to mundane matters of work, family, and society. But if we take a step back and examine the deeper currents of life, it becomes evident that the world we live in is anything but neutral. It is, in fact, a world in conflict, a battleground between two forces, each striving to shape the very course of human existence. At first glance, it may seem that the most immediate concerns are those that are tangible: economic struggles, social issues, political disagreements, and personal anxieties. Yet, beneath these surface-level struggles lies something far more profound, something that cannot be measured by the standards of the physical world. It is the struggle between good and evil, a cosmic conflict that transcends the temporary and material, and touches the very soul of humanity. In every human heart, this battle rages on, often without our awareness. The choices we make, the values we uphold, the words we speak, and even the thoughts we entertain are all part of this ongoing struggle. This conflict is not confined to individual hearts alone. It manifests itself in the world at large, in societies and in civilizations. Look around and we see evidence of this battle everywhere. The hatred, the violence, the divisiveness, the greed, the indifference, all of these are signs of a world caught in the grip of forces that seek to undermine the good, to tear down the fabric of human dignity, and to isolate individuals from the divine purpose they were created for. On the other side, we witness the attempts of those who strive for compassion, truth, and justice, who seek to build communities of love and mutual respect. Yet these efforts are often met with resistance, ridicule, and even hostility. The presence of evil is not always apparent in a blatant way. It often works its influence in the form of subtle temptations and distractions, undermining the good at every turn. The conflict between good and evil is not a new phenomenon. It is as old as humanity itself. From the very beginning of human history, there has been a cosmic struggle between forces that seek to draw humanity toward light and life, and those that seek to draw us toward darkness and destruction. In every age, this battle takes on different forms, yet the underlying conflict remains unchanged. The battle is not only external, it is internal, fought within the depths of every individual. There is not a single human being who is exempt from this struggle. No one is merely a passive observer in this cosmic war. Every person is engaged, whether they are aware of it or not. What makes this conflict so profound is that it does not just involve the human spirit, but the very fabric of reality itself. The forces of good seek to bring about a world where love, truth, and justice prevail, where people are free to live in harmony with one another and with the divine order. The forces of evil, on the other hand, seek to twist and pervert these ideals, to distort the truth, and to enslave human beings in a web of lies and deception. This battle is not merely ideological or philosophical, it is a spiritual one that shapes the very core of who we are and who we are becoming. What is at stake in this conflict is not just the direction of our lives, but the fate of the world itself. Every individual decision, every moral choice, every act of kindness or cruelty has a ripple effect, not only shaping our personal destiny, but contributing to the larger cosmic struggle. We are all, in some sense, playing a role in this great drama, whether we realize it or not. The consequences of this struggle extend far beyond the individual, touching communities, nations, and even the entire world. Every small act of goodness, every moment of courage, every decision to uphold truth is a victory in this battle. On the other hand, every moment of cowardice, every choice to embrace deceit is a step deeper into the darkness. This understanding of the world as a place in conflict has profound implications for how we live our lives. It challenges us to be more aware of the choices we make, to understand that our lives are not simply a matter of personal comfort or individual success. We are, in a very real way, part of something much larger than ourselves. Our actions matter, and the stakes are far higher than we might have imagined. Each day we are given the opportunity to contribute to the victory of good over evil, to stand firm in the face of temptation and distraction, and to be agents of change in a world that so desperately needs it. Living with the awareness of this conflict does not mean that we live in a state of constant anxiety or fear. It means that we live with purpose, knowing that our choices have significance. It means that we are aware of the forces at work in the world and choose, consciously, to align ourselves with the forces of good. It means that we are vigilant, prepared to stand firm in the face of opposition, and committed to living lives of integrity, kindness, and justice. In this way, we become active participants in the resolution of this great cosmic conflict, contributing to the eventual triumph of light over darkness. There is a certain comfort in the status quo, a peacefulness that comes from the absence of conflict or disruption. It is the way things have always been, a rhythm that we know and trust. The world around us continues its predictable course, and we as individuals find our place within it. Our lives, though not free from hardship, are at least manageable, and we often find ourselves content in the stability that the status quo offers. In this sense, there is a serene quality to the way things unfold when we choose to accept the world as it is, without seeking to challenge or change it. But there is a danger in this serenity, one that we often fail to recognize until it is too late. The danger of the status quo is not the overt turmoil of rebellion or unrest, but rather the quiet, insidious effect of complacency. It is the danger of assuming that everything is fine, because nothing appears to be broken. In a world where the surface remains calm, where there are no immediate crises or urgent problems, it becomes all too easy to slip into the false belief that things are as they should be, that we are living as we ought to live, simply because we are going along with the flow of life. This is the serene danger of the status quo, the illusion of peace that prevents us from seeing the deeper rot, the hidden struggles, the moral decay that often lies beneath the surface of our lives and our societies. Complacency in the face of the status quo is a silent poison. It seduces us into thinking that, because we are not actively fighting against anything, we are in the right. We convince ourselves that, as long as our lives are relatively stable, we need not concern ourselves with the broader, often uncomfortable questions about the direction of our lives or the condition of the world around us. We stop questioning, we stop seeking change, and most dangerously, we stop growing. In our quest for peace and ease, we become numb to the larger forces at work in the world, forces that seek to keep us in a state of passivity, in a state of stagnation. This is not to say that all stability is inherently bad or that peace should be dismissed as an ideal. Far from it. There are moments when peace and stability are essential for personal growth and well-being. But when these qualities are embraced to the point where we are no longer willing to challenge ourselves, when we allow them to lull us into a sense of false security, they become a trap. The status quo can become a prison, one that limits our potential and prevents us from reaching the heights of our moral and spiritual lives. It is in the calm of the status quo that we often ignore the deeper questions of purpose and meaning, and it is here that we begin to drift. The danger is not always in the obvious evils that are easily identified. Rather, it is in the subtle erosion of our values, the gradual slipping of our ideals, and the slow abandonment of the virtues that should guide our lives. When we stop pushing against the inertia of the world, we begin to accept whatever comes our way. We stop discerning between what is truly good and what is simply convenient or comfortable. There is a moral cost to complacency. The status quo often serves to protect us from discomfort, and it is this protection that makes it so enticing. We do not have to wrestle with difficult decisions, confront our shortcomings, or face the moral battles that come with trying to live a truly virtuous life. Instead, we can coast along, content in the illusion that all is well. But this complacency comes at a cost, for it blinds us to the evil that thrives in the shadows of our unexamined lives. We stop noticing the small injustices, the subtle corruptions, and the quiet encroachments of darker forces that seek to undermine the good in the world. We no longer see how our small choices, our willingness to compromise, to take the easy path, to avoid confrontation add up over time, leading us further and further from the life we were meant to live. There is also the danger that, in our desire to avoid discomfort, we fail to recognize the importance of the work that remains to be done. While the status quo may appear peaceful, it often masks the quiet suffering of those around us, those who are oppressed, those who are ignored, those who are suffering in silence. The serene world we see is not the true world for all, and by remaining entrenched in our own comfort, we turn a blind eye to the struggles of others. In doing so, we become complicit in perpetuating systems of injustice, inequality, and apathy. Breaking free from the status quo requires a willingness to embrace discomfort, to challenge the assumptions that keep us stagnant, and to engage actively in the work of moral and spiritual growth. It means resisting the urge to settle for the easy, the familiar, and the comfortable, and instead pursuing a life that is constantly seeking truth, justice, and goodness, even when it is difficult. It means being willing to face the uncomfortable realities of the world and of ourselves rather than retreating into the safety of complacency. The serene danger of the status quo lies in its quiet temptation to allow us to drift, to settle into a life of mere existence rather than one of purpose and intentionality. It is easy to remain unchallenged when things are peaceful, but true peace comes not from the absence of struggle, but from engaging with the world and with our own souls in a way that continually strives for what is good, true, and beautiful. It is through this struggle that we grow, and it is in this growth that we find the truest form of peace, one that cannot be found in complacency, but in the active pursuit of goodness. To disturb the demons is to challenge the very forces that seek to undermine the good, the true, and the beautiful in the world. It is an act of resistance against the darker influences that operate in both the spiritual and material realms, often subtly, but always powerfully. These demons are not always what we imagine them to be: horned, grotesque creatures lurking in the shadows, but are rather more insidious, working through temptation, deceit, fear, and division. They do not seek to make themselves known directly, but to influence the hearts and minds of individuals, leading them away from truth and righteousness. To disturb them is to stand in direct opposition to their plans, to shine light on the darkness they seek to perpetuate, and to refuse to submit to their quiet power. When we speak of disturbing the demons, we are not referring to a superficial or trivial resistance. It is not simply about rejecting evil in the moment of temptation, nor is it a mere matter of confronting external struggles. Disturbing the demons involves something far deeper. It is about engaging with the spiritual forces that shape the fabric of our world, forces that influence everything from personal choices to societal movements. These forces do not rest easily, they are persistent, and they are powerful. To disturb them is not to defeat them outright, but to disrupt their smooth operation, to question their dominion, and to unseat their influence in the most profound ways. To disturb the demons is to awaken to the reality that there is much more to existence than what we can see and touch. It is to realize that the world we live in is not neutral, but is filled with spiritual currents that continually shape the lives of individuals and nations alike. These spiritual forces are not always visible, and they do not always announce themselves through overt acts of evil or destruction. Rather, they often work through more subtle means, through complacency, apathy, fear, and division. They thrive in the absence of moral clarity, in the spaces where people turn a blind eye to injustice or accept mediocrity instead of striving for greatness. To disturb the demons is to recognize these forces for what they are, and to actively resist them in both our individual lives and in the world at large. The demons seek to lull humanity into a sense of complacency, to make people believe that the status quo is sufficient, that there is no need for change, growth, or transformation. In doing so, they prevent individuals from seeing the deep moral and spiritual battles that unfold within and around them. The demons do not want to be disturbed, for their power lies in their ability to operate unseen, unnoticed, and unchallenged. They are most effective when people go about their lives unaware of the larger spiritual forces at work, believing that the world is simply the way it is, and that there is no need to struggle against the currents that pull them in a direction they would not otherwise choose. Disturbing the demons requires both courage and clarity. It requires a willingness to confront the discomfort of the struggle, the uncertainty of the fight, and the knowledge that the forces of evil will not yield easily. It means being willing to stand firm in the face of opposition, to speak the truth when silence would be easier, and to act in accordance with one's deepest moral convictions, even when it seems that the whole world is pushing in the opposite direction. To disturb the demons is to live with intention, to strive to make choices that are consistent with the highest ideals of goodness and truth, no matter how small the acts may seem. It is to reject the easy path, the comfortable lie, and the seductive pull of compromise in favor of a life that challenges the forces of darkness at every turn. Thanks for watching.